Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, 2 men shot during an immigration raid in Los Angeles. A U.S. Marshal and a suspected undocumented immigrant were shot and wounded during a traffic stop near downtown L.A. While across the country, agents launched a sweep through Chinatown here in New York City, creating a scene of chaos with multiple people detained.
I'm Matt Rivers in Lower Manhattan, where federal agents just brought traffic to a standstill here during an immigration enforcement operation targeting illegal street vending.
Heading into week 4 now of the government shutdown, Republican senators meeting with President Trump today at the White House. Senator Katie Britt, Republican from Alabama, was in that meeting and joins us to talk about it. Plus, more than 40 million Americans are at risk of losing food assistance benefits in the next 2 weeks as a result of the standstill. We ask what some families will have to do in order to put food on the table. Meanwhile, as millions go without pay, reports are out that President Trump wants the Justice Department to pay him $230 million in compensation for the federal investigations he's faced, nearly $250 million, which would come from taxpayers.
I'm Rachel Scott here at the White House with the latest into the president's demands and who would need to approve this unprecedented move.
And Karine Jean-Pierre, White House press secretary for President Biden, and the first black queer immigrant person in that very public role, now nearly a year after leaving the White House, has also stepped away from the Democratic Party, calling herself an independent. She talks to us about her experience as detailed in her new memoir and why she's made the bold move to step away from the Democrats.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin with rising tensions on America's streets as ICE agents carry out a crackdown on immigration. A chaotic scene erupted in New York City tonight as federal authorities teamed up with ICE agents in an ongoing operation to target illegal street vendors. Many of them are believed to be migrants and residents here in New York City. Tonight, multiple people have been detained. The ICE operation swept Canal Street in Lower Manhattan, an area known to draw tourists and bargain shoppers looking for knockoff designer products. This just hours after Homeland Security officials and a suspected undocumented immigrant were both shot and wounded in a targeted traffic stop in Los Angeles. Homeland Security officials say a man trying to evade arrest rammed a federal vehicle. Officers opened fire and hit him in the elbow. DHS says agents used a pit maneuver to detain the suspect who had escaped custody before. Matt Rivers leads us off tonight from Lower Manhattan.
Tonight, an immigration crackdown in New York City as federal agents descended on Canal Street, famous for its bargain shopping and knockoff designer goods, and parts of Chinatown. The raid, part of an operation targeting illegal street vending. The scene turning chaotic as agents made arrests and pushed back the crowd.
And it's gotten a little hairy at points with people running, people falling down in the street, and federal agents running after them.
The traffic coming to a standstill at the start of rush hour, with cars trapped between law enforcement officers. The people selling those knockoff goods are often migrants, which means that federal investigations here often include a component of immigration enforcement. It comes amid heavy federal presence in cities across the country, from New York to Chicago to Los Angeles, where today Homeland Security officials say a U.S. Marshal and a suspected undocumented immigrant with a criminal record were both shot and wounded during a targeted traffic stop.
This is 20th and Trinity. Looks like they wedged the vehicle. Shots were fired. We see the windows were blown out.
DHS officials say agents used a standard pit maneuver to detain the suspect who had escaped custody in the past. They say this time, when the man rammed a federal vehicle trying to evade arrest, officers opened fire, hitting him in the elbow. A bullet ricocheting into the hand of the U.S. Marshal. Both men were hospitalized. Our Matt Gutman right there on the scene.
I just want to give you a sense of where we are. Just down the street, that black vehicle, that's an FBI vehicle. Beyond it is where the incident happened. But right here, that's a church. And on the other side of these LAPD vehicles, right across the street, that's a school.
The suspect, a TikToker known as Richard LA18, is an influencer known for capturing video of these ICE operations in LA, even recognized by the city of LA for his contributions to the community. Last week, this dramatic Border Patrol chase of a suspect through a Chicago neighborhood ended with a pit maneuver, the operation sparking anti-ICE clashes between protesters and federal agents. A federal judge in Chicago, concerned about aggressive tactics, restricting the use of tear gas and ordering agents to wear body cameras.
Matt Rivers joins us now. Matt, what else do we know about this operation in New York City?
Well, basically officials saying that this was a mixture of an operation, both immigration enforcement as well as targeting illegal vending, which is certainly something that we've seen here in the past on Canal Street. It's nothing new necessarily, but given what we're seeing around the country right now, these sorts of raids really take on a heightened sense of significance. Lindsay.
They certainly do. All right, Matt Rivers for us. Thanks so much, Matt. Sources tell ABC News President Trump is now pushing the Justice Department to pay him $230 million for past investigations involving him. That includes the Russia election interference investigation and the classified documents case. Who would foot the bill? U.S. taxpayers. Here's our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott.
Tonight, sources tell ABC News President Trump is pushing for the government to give him $230 million, a wholly unprecedented personal payout from the American taxpayers as compensation for the federal investigations he's faced. The president says the Justice Department owes him.
I guess they probably owe me a lot of money for that. Probably, yeah, that's true. That's very interesting.
President Trump filed claims against the Justice Department in 2023 and again last year. One about the investigation into his campaign and Russian meddling in the 2016 election. The other concerning the FBI search of his Mar-a-Lago home, where agents removed boxes of classified documents Trump had taken from the White House and kept in a storage area, a ballroom, and even a bathroom. The president calling himself a victim of malicious prosecution, claiming his privacy rights were violated. If the settlement goes through, he would personally collect nearly $250 million from American taxpayers.
If I get money from our country, I'll do something nice with it, like give it to charity or give it to the White House while we restore the White House. And we're doing a great job in the White House.
The Justice Department officials who would likely have to sign off on the settlement were once President Trump's own personal lawyers. Attorney General Pam Bondi and her deputy Todd Blanche. They recently stood with the president in the Oval Office as he acknowledged the extraordinary situation.
They raided my house in Florida. It was an illegal raid. I have a lawsuit that was doing very well. And when I became president, I said, I'm sort of suing myself. I don't know. How do you settle the lawsuit? I'll say, give me X dollars, right? And I don't know what to do with the lawsuit. It's a great lawsuit. And now I won. It sort of looks bad. I'm suing myself, right?
Rachel Scott joins us now from the White House. Hey, Rachel, what else are you hearing from your sources about this unprecedented request by the president?
Yeah, this is unprecedented, Lindsay. Not only would this be American taxpayer dollars that would then go toward the president, it would likely have to be signed off by DOJ officials who previously served as the president's own personal attorneys. We are told they would likely have to approve this $230 million payment to the president. Tonight, the Justice Department, in response to a question from ABC News, tells us that they will follow the advice and guidance of career ethics officials. Lindsay.
Rachel Scott from the White House. Thanks so much, Rachel. The second summit between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin is off. The White House said that the planned Budapest meeting was canceled after Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had a productive call on Monday. Trump has embraced a ceasefire proposal that's backed by Kyiv and other European leaders to freeze the conflict on the current front line. Now to the government shutdown. It is day 21 and compromise is nowhere in sight. Millions of Americans are impacted and worries are mounting over paying the bills and for many putting food on the table. At the White House today, President Trump hosted Republican senators, and the president called the sound of the demolition at the White House for the president's new $250 million ballroom music to his ears. Here's Mary Bruce at the White House.
Tonight, on day 21 of the government shutdown, the president inviting Senate Republican leaders to lunch in the Rose Garden, telling them all about the construction underway for his new $250 million ballroom in what is often called the People's House. The president once said the project wouldn't interfere with the current structure of the White House, but cameras caught bulldozers razing parts of the East Wing.
You probably hear the beautiful sound of construction to the back. You hear that sound? Oh, that's music to my ears. I love that sound. Other people don't like it. I love it, Josh. I think when I hear that sound, it reminds me of money.
As the shutdown drags on, Democrats digging in on their demand that Republicans repeal Medicaid cuts and extend health care subsidies that will soon expire, causing insurance premiums to rise for millions of Americans.
Republicans may not have time to fix people's health care, but apparently they got plenty of time for a mini pep rally with Donald Trump.
Today I asked Senate Republican leader John Thune, why not just talk?
Do you owe it to the American people to at least be negotiating?
Well, I think we are. We have negotiated. I don't know what there is to negotiate.
But thousands of miles away from the Rose Garden in Decatur, Georgia, Juan Sorrow, a disabled Navy veteran, worries if this shutdown drags on, he won't be able to feed his family.
It is literally the difference between eating and not eating on any given day.
Like 42 million other Americans, he relies on SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is set to run out of money in a little over a week.
This isn't a game. This is real lives. Little children are being affected. Veterans are being affected, and people that we've served our country faithfully, and now it's time for the government to help us and to serve us.
Now, President Trump says he won't meet with Democrats until they first reopen the government. And at 21 days, this shutdown now tied for the second longest ever. The longest ever was 35 days during President Trump's first term. Lindsay?
Mary, thank you. Let's talk about a sticking point prolonging the government shutdown: health care. Specifically, the Affordable Care Act subsidies due to expire at the end of this year. For that, we want to bring in Republican Senator Katie Britt from Alabama. Senator Britt, thanks so much for your time. You've said that you're open to a conversation about extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies, but with adjustments. What would you like to see changed?
Well, first, I want us to open the government, Lindsay. Look, this is needless politics by the Democrats. We have people that are really paying the price. This weekend, I traveled all over the state of Alabama. I talked to people who had been furloughed. I talked to small business owners who said, look, we can't make it one more week. I talked to people who felt like that we were way out of touch up here, not making sure that the resources that they depended on were there. And so I think we've got to get back and make sure that the Democrats open the government so that people can get their paychecks, so that WIC can continue, and truly so that things like food stamps don't run out. There are real issues that are coming to play because of the politics that Democrats are playing. When you look at this ACA conversation that Democrats are bringing into the fold here, look, this is a problem of their own making, Lindsay. If you go back to Obamacare, starting in 2010, you move to 2014 where they began these subsidies. These COVID-era subsidies that they're talking about right now began in 2021, renewed in 2022. They themselves actually set the deadline in 2025 for the expiration of these subsidies. At the end of the day, what we're hearing from people is that there is fraud in these, that there is abuse, and it's not necessary for people who may be millionaires or make $600,000 a year to receive these. So if these are going to continue, you certainly have to make sure that there are reforms so that things are sustainable.
And as you mentioned, the nation's anti-hunger program, SNAP, plays a critical role in reducing poverty, including for residents in your home state of Alabama. In the fiscal year 2024, more than 750,000 residents, or 15% of your state's population, benefited from SNAP. What are you doing to try to ensure that those benefits aren't interrupted because of the shutdown?
Yeah, we actually just had this conversation today. I was able to speak with Russ Vought. Obviously, money is running out, and people will go without their SNAP benefits as soon as the end of this month or the very beginning of the next month. Look, these are real things. These are real consequences, and this is what I wish my Democrat colleagues would realize. They can open the government today, vote on a clean CR. Lindsay, you have been doing this a long time. You know that this bill is just something that they have voted on 13 times. Republicans did not put any type of nugget in there, no Republican priority. Our only priority was the American people.
Today, Majority Leader John Thune took to the Senate floor and blamed far-left Democrats for blocking the government funding bill 11 times. Then Minority Leader Chuck Schumer pointed the finger right back at Republicans. Let's take a listen.
What the heck is he talking about? How is it far left to say we want to lower health care premiums and spare tens of millions of people from financial ruin? Far left? Tell that to an American family whose premiums will go up from $200 a month to $1,400 a month.
So you've argued that this conversation must wait until the government reopens. State insurance officials warn that it's actually already too late to update rates before consumers start shopping for their 2026 coverage on November 1st. An independent research group at KFF estimates premiums will increase by more than twofold next year if the subsidies expire. So do you agree that it's urgent to have this health care conversation now and perhaps not wait?
Well, look here on the subsidies issue, let's be clear. When it comes to the increases that people will see in 2026, 80% of those increases are just because of Obamacare. They have absolutely nothing to do with the subsidies. What Democrats are showing here is they know the system that they created is absolutely broken. And so they are clamoring for someone to blame, and they are doing their best to latch on to this.
By law, you and many of your Senate colleagues are still getting paid while many government employees are working for free. How do you square that with them?
Yeah, so I actually put out at the very first day of the shutdown and said, look, please withhold my paycheck until other government employees are being paid again. I will not take a paycheck when people are not getting their SNAP benefits. I will not take a paycheck when people who are working at FAA to keep our skies safe are not getting one. I will not take a paycheck when we're not sure how we're going to pay the military when their next paycheck comes. And so I would hope that every one of my Democratic colleagues who continue to vote no on these CRs to open back up the government and give people the benefits and the pay that they deserve will withhold their pay as well. And so that's how I square it up. I'm not taking it. I think that we need to lead by example, and certainly the people who are keeping us from opening this government should do the same.
Senator Katie Britt, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lindsay.
In France, there are new developments in the stunning heist at the Louvre. A prosecutor is now suggesting the stolen crown jewels are worth an estimated $102 million. About 100 investigators are currently on the case, hunting for 4 suspects. ABC's chief international correspondent James Longman takes us inside the Louvre.
The gang who pulled off what's being called the crime of the century is still on the run tonight, evading capture now for almost 3 days since that stunning heist at the Louvre. The prosecutor's office puts the value of their haul at about $102 million. But with every hour that passes, the chances grow that these priceless jewels have left France, maybe for good. Tonight, we were given exclusive access to the museum while still on lockdown, the first news team inside since the robbery.
Right outside the Apollo Gallery, and I can see right through into the main area. It's a huge vaulted gallery, incredible gilded ceilings. They came in through the window at the far end.
The gallery doors barred and sealed. This palace of French history now a crime scene. Sunday's robbery was the 4th in France in just 2 months, reigniting a serious debate over security at museums.
Madame la Ministre, James.
The culture minister we met yesterday defending her position in the French parliament today, insisting there were no security failures in the wing that sits hundreds of yards from the Mona Lisa. But an audit report seen by ABC says a stunning 75% of one wing is without CCTV surveillance, another 60%.
And Lindsay, the president of the Louvre will face questions at a Senate hearing here in Paris tomorrow as recriminations grow over this apparent major lapse in security. Lindsay?
James, thank you. Vice President J.D. Vance is in Jerusalem tonight, working to hold the fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in place and advance President Trump's peace plan. Now the president is issuing new warnings to Hamas a little more than a week since that deal went into effect. Our Tom Sufi Burge reports from Tel Aviv. Tom, is the ceasefire holding, and what progress is being made on the broader peace agreement for Gaza?
Yeah, Lindsay, the ceasefire is now holding after it temporarily collapsed on Sunday when 2 Israeli soldiers and dozens of Palestinians were killed. Now, on the issue of Hamas returning the bodies of deceased hostages, which is a key part of the initial phase of the deal, Hamas has tonight returned 2 more bodies to Israel, although tests will be carried out to establish if they are the bodies of hostages. Right now, 15 bodies of dead hostages are still unaccounted for, including 2 Americans. There's been some progress on humanitarian aid. Aid agencies say it is easier to deliver aid to those in need in Gaza because of the ceasefire, but under the deal there should be 600 trucks going into Gaza on any day, and we're well short of that. So there's progress in some senses, but beyond that there are major gaps in the deal on the future status of Gaza, and key issues need to be resolved to help hold the ceasefire in place. Lindsay.
And that certainly is clear. And Hamas appears to be back in control in the part of Gaza from which the IDF has withdrawn. What new pressure is the U.S. putting on Hamas to disarm?
Yeah, look, disarming Hamas, Lindsay, is a key part of the deal and arguably the hardest issue to solve right now. Israel is warning that if Hamas does not disarm, Israel could restart the war. Today, Vice President J.D. Vance warned Hamas it would be obliterated if it doesn't disarm. And President Trump, in a post, went further, saying U.S. allies in the Middle East and beyond would be willing to go into Gaza with a, quote, heavy force and straighten out Hamas if it does not disarm. Now, Arab and Muslim majority countries have indicated they might be willing to take part in a future peacekeeping force in Gaza if the conditions are right, but no nation has said it would be willing to fight Hamas. It is hard to imagine that scenario, so the credibility of the president's threat in that post is unclear, and he is giving Hamas wriggle room in his language. Vice President Vance didn't offer any clues about how Hamas could be incentivized or forced to disarm. So the bottom line right now, Lindsay, is that for now at least, Hamas gunmen appear to be reasserting control in part of Gaza, and this is the biggest obstacle to the peace deal going forward, with no obvious solution in sight. Lindsay?
Tom Sufi Burge reporting from Tel Aviv for us. Thanks so much, Tom. Now to the mid-air scare on board a flight from Omaha to Los Angeles. Pilots mistakenly thought someone banging on the door was trying to breach the cockpit, and they made an emergency landing. ABC's Gio Benitez covers aviation for us.
Tonight, this SkyWest flight making an emergency landing after the pilot lost contact with the flight crew on the other side of the locked cockpit and heard banging on the cockpit door. Concerned something terrible could be playing out in the cabin. Authorities now say that banging was the flight crew trying to get the pilot's attention. The plane headed from Omaha, Nebraska to Los Angeles last night when SkyWest says it experienced communication issues and returned out of an abundance of caution. This passenger video capturing the pilot's announcement after landing.
We weren't sure if something was going on with the airplane, so that's why we're coming back here. It's going to be a little bit, we're going to have to figure out what's going on.
The FAA telling us it was determined there was a problem with the interphone system. And Lindsay, SkyWest apologized to those passengers for the inconvenience, and that flight did end up making it to Los Angeles. Lindsay?
All right, good news on that front. Gio, thank you. Tonight, newly formed tropical storm Melissa is in the Caribbean. So where is it heading next? And when is it expected to become a hurricane? Let's get right to our chief meteorologist, Ginger Z. Hi, Ginger.
Yeah, by the weekend, we could see it become a hurricane. But hi, Lindsay. You know, this tropical storm at this point looks really unhealthy, meaning that it's asymmetric. It doesn't have a lot of symmetry or kind of that common look that we see, but it's about the center of it, 300 miles south of Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and it's moving west at 15. We don't have a forecast cone, but rather what I would call a forecast blob, because the confidence is not high as to where exactly the center goes. It's going to be highly dependent on how much rain Haiti or Jamaica gets, depending on where that goes in the coming days and through the weekend. But I can promise you that a lot of rain will fall, especially it looks like Western Haiti, because they'll be on that right side, and that's kind of where the convection or the storms are. One thing it's fighting is wind shear, and a lot of storms have fought this year. It's kind of these high winds in the upper atmosphere. It's represented by red here. You see how it's not as much where the actual center of the storm is, but once you get up to Cuba and the Bahamas, it's going to be fighting it. So it's got a lot to fight through, and that's why the confidence isn't high as to where it goes, because it's not going to want to go that way. One thing it does have, plenty of fuel, 4 to 5 degree above average water temperatures. So from the base, you've got a lot. It's just when you go higher in the storm, it becomes problematic. And then everybody likes to see these spaghetti plots. They're not as uniform as you'd like because of that lack of confidence at the beginning, but a majority of them still keep it away from the lower 48 because of a front and a trough we've got here. We're just going to have to watch for the next 5-6 days to see exactly where this begins to move. Lindsay.
That spaghetti definitely jumbled up a little more than normal. All right, Ginger, thank you. Tonight, a January 6th rioter pardoned by President Trump is under arrest again. He was among the first to breach the Capitol, and authorities are now accusing him of threatening to kill House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Here's ABC's chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky.
Tonight, a January 6th rioter pardoned by President Trump is under arrest again, now charged with making a terroristic threat to kill House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. This is Christopher Moynihan on January 6th. Federal prosecutors pointing to these images in court papers, saying he was among the first to breach the Capitol and desecrate the Senate chamber, rifling through papers while muttering, "There's got to be something in here we can expletive use against these scumbags." Now, the FBI and New York State Police say Moynihan sent these chilling texts. Hakeem Jeffries makes a speech in a few days in NYC. "I cannot allow this terrorist to live," one message said. "Even if I am hated, he must be eliminated. I will kill him for the future." Tonight, Jeffries posting his gratitude to police and writing, "Unfortunately, our brave men and women in law enforcement are being forced to spend their time keeping our community safe from these violent individuals who should never have been pardoned."
Our thanks to Aaron Katursky. Japan has elected its first female prime minister. Sanae Takaichi is the leader of the Conservative Party. She's advocated for tougher immigration and tourism laws. She also opposes same-sex marriage. She was first elected to parliament in 1993 and served in several key government positions, including Minister of Economic Security. President Trump is set to meet with the new prime minister next week. And still ahead, as the government shutdown drags on, money is running out for America's food stamp program. How this political spat threatens a vital nutrition source for millions of Americans. And for more than 2 years, she serves as White House press secretary and one of the most public defenders of the Biden administration. Now, Karine Jean-Pierre tells her story from inside the White House in her new memoir, Independent. You talk about being definitely a part of the president's inner circle, his daily routine. Was there ever a time that you observed anything with his mental acuity that gave you pause? And the new perspective leading the fashion industry is high-end French fashion house Hermès made history today. Welcome back, everyone. One of the biggest impacts of the government shutdown is about to hit tens of millions of Americans, and hard. Come next Saturday, November 1st, several states are warning that they'll be forced to suspend Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, otherwise known as SNAP benefits, if Democrats and Republicans can't resolve their differences. How SNAP feeds tens of millions of Americans is tonight's By the Numbers. Once called food stamps, SNAP benefits are still referred to as EBT benefits and serve roughly 42 million lower-income Americans. But the administration's big, beautiful bill, which the president signed in July, cut the program by about $186 billion over 10 years. And that has left states desperate to plug a large hole since the federal government had been responsible for half the cost of administering the program. Starting fiscal year 2027, the federal government will cover only a quarter, not half of the cost of administering SNAP. And beginning fiscal year 2028, most states will also be required to pitch in on food benefit costs, not just administrative costs. Many state governments simply won't have the cash on hand to initially backfill the millions in federal funding that will be lost. Of course, that will trickle down to families, elderly and children included, who themselves will need to scrimp. And joining us now to discuss these impacts further is Gina Platanino, who is the SNAP Interim Director for the Food Research and Action Center. Gina, thanks so much for joining us. Do we know from the USDA, which helps administer SNAP, to what degree these benefits, when fully funded, help reduce the likelihood of food insecurity?
We had this report called the ERS report that every year talks about food insecurity. And over time, we see that it helps fund more individuals to have the resources that they need. And these individuals, are children, are older adults, are people with disabilities, are veterans, are working Americans who are trying to make ends meet. And this is the difference between them having something to put on their plates, being able to pay shelter, and so many things that we have so much data as to what these benefits do for families on a day-to-day.
And who demographically receives SNAP benefits when it comes to children or elderly?
All of the above. The majority of SNAP users are children, followed by older adults, and then people with disability. And one of the things to understand is that the three main reasons why people engage in the program is because they have been fired, right? They've lost their jobs, or their wages have been reduced, or they have a family member to take care of.
And
this
of course,
is a temporary program.
Right. You mentioned that it's a temporary program. Can you explain the time limits, especially the work requirements involved?
Yeah, and by temporary program, I mean that, people come in and off as they increase wages. So it's an average of 16 to 24 months. Time limits has been something terrible that has been expanded in HR 1, as you mentioned. Basically, individuals 18 to 64, including people who have retired, including, those who are older, people, veterans, unhoused, people who are youth aging out of foster care, parents with kids 14 and up, have to meet this very stringent work requirements that if they don't show they are working at least 20 hours a week, they lose their benefits, and they can only get SNAP for 3 months in a 3-year period, regardless if they're working 19.9 hours, regardless if the main reason that they can't have enough hours is lack of transportation or lack of resources or not a job. It's the main reason that people just can't get enough hours.
Have you seen a recent increase in people seeking these SNAP benefits?
SNAP is tied to the economy. When we have a strong economy, people are not in SNAP because like I said, if there's no strong employment, if people can't access resources, then they have to depend on this program to be able to pay their rent, their childcare, their car insurance. So when our economy improves, when we have a strong labor market, when food prices are not double what they were this time last year, those things cause SNAP enrollment to increase. So we need the economy to improve.
But will the loss of federal funding to SNAP even temporarily affect student access to reduced cost lunches at school?
So what I would say is that it doesn't have to end, right? USDA has the resources, the contingency funds, and the reserves to ensure that benefits are not delayed and that SNAP goes as forward. That is a different bucket of money for schools, but I would say that the majority of people on SNAP are children, so that will impact their ability when they go home if there's food on the table.
Gina Platanino, we thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, she was press secretary to President Biden's White House for more than 2 years, and now Karine Jean-Pierre is giving her take on Biden, Harris, and the high-stakes presidential election. We talked to Jean-Pierre about her new memoir titled Independent. And why this patient is playing the clarinet in the middle of her brain surgery. The answer will astound you. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. Did President Biden have the mental acuity to become president for a second term? Did Kamala Harris really have a shot at winning a first term? These are among the questions we asked Karine Jean-Pierre, who for more than 2 years held the job of White House press secretary, a job she describes as a high-wire act, fielding questions from an aggressive media as one of the most public defenders of the Biden administration and its policies. Jean-Pierre has titled her memoir Independent because she is now exactly that, an independent and not a member of the Democratic Party. That's a very bold step for anyone, let alone the woman who was the first black, queer, and immigrant press secretary in U.S. history. Karine, thank you so much for having the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
You write in your book, Independent, that prior to the summer of 2024, you could have never imagined stepping away from the Democratic Party. What ultimately was the straw for you?
So you're correct. I mean, I worked for two Democratic presidents, President Obama and President Biden, which was both of them an honor of a lifetime. Hi, everybody. And what I saw the summer of 2024 in July, that 3 weeks between the debate and the president deciding that he was going to pass the torch over to then Vice President Harris, it was heartbreaking. It really was. It was heartbreaking to see someone who had given 50 plus years of their career, who had objectively had a very good couple of years as president, be treated in this way. After the outcome, I had an opportunity to think this really deeply. And I do believe this is a Democratic Party today, even from that moment till today, that has taken groups for granted, like Black women. I think they've taken us for granted, like the LGBTQ community. And the rhetoric and what I'm hearing right now in the moment from the party is there's certain groups that have to be thrown under the bus because there's a short-term gain for them. And I think that is wrong.
This book is incredibly nuanced. What would you say to critics who might say, you are criticizing those in the Democratic Party who you felt abandoned President Biden, but then you left the party? How do you square those two?
Black women are the backbone of the Democratic Party, and we are constantly on the front lines, and they've taken us for granted. That's what I see. I am a Black woman, I am a queer woman, I'm an immigrant. And so for me, I represent communities that matter, that are important, that are the fabric of this country. And so when I hear that type of rhetoric, or people are saying, who are leaders of the Democratic Party, are saying, don't do anything. The other side will implode. Don't do anything. When people are taken from the street, disappearing. And so that, to me, is something that is concerning, troubling, and scary.
You spent a lot of time talking about President Biden's debate performance against Donald Trump.
Look,
which at the time you describe as a faltering performance, and then subsequently those who you felt unfairly abandoned him. In your estimation, how should those who had concerns about even just his performance, how should they have responded?
Yeah. So there's so many different pieces to this. It was a horrible, terrible, bad debate. He owns up to it. No one is denying that. But we just had a couple of months left. There was so much at stake in that election. There was Project 2025 that was being touted, that was incredibly dangerous. And I think what we should have done is double down and say, okay, you know what? We have to win, and it's all hands on deck. This is what we have to do. And that didn't happen. And so I do think the cruel way that he was attacked during that time wasn't the way to do it. And then he had to step down. But Vice President Harris almost didn't become the nominee because there was talk of a brokered convention and open primary. I believe these types of actions, people see that.
I want to read an excerpt from the book. You write, with so little time left, the Dems should have put their heads down and run their hardest through the tape. To stick with a track metaphor, they should have taken the L for Biden's bad debate and moved on with their eye toward finishing the race strong and achieving victory. That's certainly what the Republicans would have done. No speech was too garbled, no action too malicious or bizarre to make its leaders speak out against Trump. But does that make it right for either party to overlook potentially grave concerns?
So, a couple things. I don't think we can compare Donald Trump and Joe Biden, two very different people. You have one person who actually is decent, cares about the American people. And I do believe that we should have just continued to put our heart in, lean in with just such a small amount of time left. And that's what I didn't understand. And that is the difference. And I don't think that this two-party system is working. I do think it's broken. And we need to figure out how do we create a system where the people are at the center of this in order to move this country forward. And this is why I wrote Independent to start that conversation. And hopefully I've done that.
You talk about being definitely a part of the president's inner circle, his daily routine. Was there ever a time that you observed anything with his mental acuity that gave you pause?
No, not at all. He is someone that I engaged with almost on a daily basis. And he understood policy. He was very good at debating policy with his team. I watched that happen. He was very on top of history. And so I saw someone who put this country first and engaged on a daily level to make sure that he was doing what he can for the American people. That was my experience.
Lastly, I want to go back to a point in the book where you say on November 5th, when it was clear that Vice President Harris had not won the presidency, you say you were not surprised that you didn't expect she could win.
And I want to be very clear, not because she wasn't qualified. I think she was more than qualified and should have been president of the United States. I want to be very clear about that. Being a Black woman, walking through this earth, this community, these different communities, and being who I am, and experiencing what I have experienced, which I talk about in the book, I'm not surprised. I'm not.
Karine Jean-Pierre, we thank you, so much.
Thank
really
you,
appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Coming up, we're going back to the Upside Down. Gaten Matarazzo shares his reaction to this being the final season of Stranger Things. And can a unique browser from OpenAI using artificial intelligence make a dent in Google's 3-decade-long dominance? Stay with us. OpenAI takes on Google with the launch of a new web browser. A patient with Parkinson's plays the clarinet during her brain surgery, and the home run that sent the Toronto Blue Jays to the World Series for the first time in 32 years. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown. Today, our artificial intelligence company OpenAI announced that they will be releasing a browser, putting them in direct competition with search giant Google. The move could allow the company to capture lucrative revenue from digital advertising. The company says that their popular chatbot ChatGPT has 800 million users, but most get it for free. Google stock is down at least 2% on the news. High-end retailer Hermes has appointed the first black woman to lead a luxury fashion house. Grace Wales Bonner will be the iconic French brand's creative director of menswear, years after saying in an interview that it would be a dream to work there. Bonner is an accomplished designer, starting her own label and winning British Menswear Designer of the Year at the Fashion Awards in 2024. Social media platform X is now launching a new marketplace for old and inactive handles, allowing premium subscribers to request and buy defunct usernames on an X handles marketplace. The company says that some of them will be free, but other more rare handles could command thousands of dollars depending on brand and uniqueness. If you were looking for a camera in your toilet bowl, now's your chance. American manufacturer Kohler is debuting a new clip-on attachment for your toilet equipped with optical sensors that the company says will detect changes in your gut health, hydration, and more. The company says the device is low profile and will send information to an accompanying app that tracks your personal health using machine learning algorithms that analyze whatever's going on in the bowl. The device is also equipped with a fingerprint sensor for user security. The device retails for $600 starting today. For the first time in more than 3 decades, the Toronto Blue Jays are heading to the World Series. George Springer was the hero in Toronto's Game 7 win, hammering a 3-run go-ahead home run in the 7th inning to give the Blue Jays a 4-3 lead and final margin. The Blue Jays will now look ahead to the World Series date on Friday with the defending champions, the Los Angeles Dodgers. A Parkinson's patient managed to play a tune on her clarinet while undergoing brain surgery. Denise Bacon underwent surgery for her Parkinson's disease, in which doctors delivered electrical stimulation to her brain to assess stiffness and tremors in real time. She remained awake for the 4-hour surgery and was able to tap out a tune on the woodwind instrument that she's played for years. Bacon says she is already feeling improvements in her movement since starting stimulation treatment. She says next, she wants to get back out on the dance floor.
I'm feeling really pleased that that I'm getting towards being able to play the clarinet again.
Set in the 1980s in the fictional Midwestern town of Hawkins, Indiana, the hit Netflix series Stranger Things follows a group of friends who uncover government secrets, supernatural forces, and a spooky alternate dark dimension known as the Upside Down. Now, as the show enters its highly anticipated 5th and final season, the group bands together to battle the darkness one last time. Let's take a look.
After what we've been through, this thing it ties us together forever.
Joining us now in the Upside Down is actor Gaten Matarazzo, who plays Dustin. Thank you so much for joining us, Gaten.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So curious, when you first heard this is going to be the final chapter, what was your reaction to that?
We knew going in that we were approaching the end of it. We had been told pretty early on in the process. I mean, from the first season, it wasn't clear whether we'd have a second at all. And then once it gained some success, which we were very grateful for, then I think Matt and Ross, our creators, knew that they wanted to have an end in sight and understand when they were going to wrap it up, because a lot of shows that are quite successful tend to try to bank off that success for a good long time, and then they get wrapped up in a situation that they don't know how to end. And I think they knew that they wanted to have somewhere to go, and so they kept that in mind, and we knew it would probably be about 4 or 5 seasons.
Some of the episodes are actually the length of a whole movie,
Yes,
really. How does that change the way you shoot it?
Oh, I think it feels like the same show we've always made, which is fun to do for sure. We don't necessarily film everything chronologically, so it's kind of hard to tell when things are bouncing around. Sometimes I forget if I'm filming from episode 4, 6, or whatever it may be, which I think makes it quite a lot of fun and almost makes it feel like one really long movie. And I think that's always how the show has read when at least when I personally watch it, it feels to me like even if a show is 8 or 9 episodes, it feels like it moves similarly to a very long movie anyway. So we're kind of used to that.
The tone of this season is really so dark and heavy. So Dustin really kind of injecting a little bit of his personality, sense of humor in it. Was that something that was built in, or you kind of brought on your own?
I don't know. I think that was always pretty much the intention with the character from the beginning, and I think the more of a challenge was kind of trying to bring a bit more nuance there and not just go with quippy one-liners, which I'm really grateful that, I don't think they wanted all their characters to feel really well thought out, and we had the time to do that. We had several seasons and a lot of time invested in these characters to bring a lot of depth over the course of these 5 seasons. So I think that, that depth comes along the way, and it's really fun to do, and I always enjoyed it. It kind of brings a little bit of less pressure on me, or I can have a little bit more fun.
Now, this is one I'm sure you're not going to be able to go down the rabbit hole. I don't even know if you're going to really be able to give us any answer at all. But maybe. I will ask nonetheless, because there is so much anticipation about how this will all end without any spoilers. Can you give us a sense? Are we going to have some surprises?
For sure.
Some twists there?
I don't think that there would be much of a season if we didn't have a lot of, it's definitely a roller coaster, and it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to make, and they knew going in that it was going to be huge, and there was an expectation set to make sure that it kind of lived up to what 4 brought, and 4 was huge, bigger than I think we initially thought it was going to be. So it's large, it's long, which I'm excited about, and since it took so long to make, that's, I think, refreshing to a lot of people that there's a lot of show there. You're right about the fact that there's not much
Yes, I understand. I get it. Gaten, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Continued success
Likewise.
to you. This final season of Stranger Things will drop on Netflix in 3 parts. 4 episodes on November 26th, 3 episodes on Christmas Day, and the finale drops on New Year's Eve. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.